It is a great honor today to be interviewing my buddy for a long time, Dr. Charles Schlesinger, and we're talking about something that's kind of new and exciting in dentistry, and the fact that when you travel around the world, you have an extensive implant background. You're leading the way at the well, you call it the OCO Biomedical, but us older dentists know it from the O Company. Starting back in 1976, and now it's OCO Biomedical. But, like I've said a million times, when you go around the world, 3 out of 4 general dentists place an implant every month. They say in Korea, 15,000 out of 20,000 general dentists place an implant every single month. Germany, everyone does. Brazil, I don't think I've ever met a dentist in Brazil who doesn't place implants routinely. And then you come to this great country of ours, 120,000 general dentists, and 95% of them have never, ever placed a single implant in their life. We have 31 million Americans walking around with a full denture where it is really debilitating. And you sell mini implants. And these dentists will literally get on Dental Town and bitch about, oh my God, it's Mrs. Jones. She's 80 years old. She's always coming in for a sore spot, a denture adjustment. I charged out one reline for $200 a year ago, and I've had to adjust this thing 10 times. She's always on my schedule. It's non-productive. It's like, well, dude, you're a doctor. Why didn't you just place 6 mini implants, charge her $5,000, make her happy, you make money? And you know what? I want to open with this, Charles. Here's my opening question for you. When I was in college, if you drink beer and whiskey and wrecked your car and got in a fist fight, that was good. But if you smoked pot, you were going to jail, kicked out of college and everything. Now pot's legal in Colorado, and I've just heard that that probably Nevada's next. When I was in college, gay people were just, they're just born wrong and bad. And now gay people can get married. I swear, I still feel that's the taboo with mini implants today. You don't ever hear an oral surgeon or a periodontist talking about it. The only people that do it are a few general dentists. And it's like the oral surgeons, it's like they're beating their chest. Like, if you're not going to make a mountain out of a molehill, and if you're, this denture lady, this should be a $30, $50, $100,000 bone grafting, this big old deal. And here I look at America as 330 million people, and half of them don't have any money for that kind of stuff. And you sell mini implants, and what do you think of? What are your mini implant sales compared to the big root forms?
Our mini implant sales they pale in comparison to the larger root form.
What does that mean? 5%, 10%?
No, I would say we're probably about 20% of our sales are small diameter, even though our small diameter implants are really what brought this company to the forefront.
The O Company.
Yeah, the O Company.
Explain the O Company. Explain the O Company and Dave DeLees, Dr. Dave DeLees. Go back to your roots.
Sure. Go back to our roots. So, Dave graduated dental school back in 1967 and came out to Hobbs, New Mexico, started placing dental implants because he felt there was a need, started with subperiosteals, since that's what was the treatment option at that time. During that time, he had developed a lot of techniques in order to refine the subperiosteal implant, and got to a point at one point where he developed a 1-hour refractory cast method which allowed him to do a single-day subperiosteal back in the early 1970s. So that grew the company as far as being, and grew his reputation as a practitioner that was doing implants. He was having doctors from all over the world coming out to visit him, and then he felt that there was a problem with the prosthetic connection. At the time, nothing was standardized. Mostly everything was bars, clips, and he came up with the O-ball overdenture connection, patented it in 1980, and the rest, as we say, is history. Became and still is the most common overdenture connection in the world. And
so he invented the ball and locator.
The O-ball, not the locator, but the O-ball with the housing, the rubber O-ring housing. And patented that, got his patent in 1980, started it in about 1977, and that was around the time he started the O Company, which they were just doing attachments at that point for subperiosteal implants. through the years, then they grew and brought in root form implants, blade implants, root form implants. 2001 was when they launched the 3.0, which was the very first one-piece 3mm implant on the market. And then from then on, moved into all the other various implants that we have within our line.
And I want to take you back down memory. I'm 52. Do you mind saying how old you are?
I'm 48.
48. Okay. Well,
So
to you kids out there that are 25 years old and just graduated from dental school, take you back memory lane. Do you realize that when I was in dental school from 83 to 87, that I was eating lunch with an oral surgeon, and there was an older oral surgeon 3 tables over that started placing these subperiosteals, ramus blades, early implantologists, and they called him the butcher. Yeah. And then when I moved out to Arizona, there was a guy across the street from me, and he was doing subs. This is back in 1987. He was like 4 blocks away, and people literally, they talk like these people were lunatics and need to have their license taken away. And these were the earliest pioneers. So if memory teaches anything, everything that just when Thomas had when J.P. Morgan wired his house for electricity, everybody thought he was nuts, going to burn the whole damn thing down. Yet they were all lighting their homes with kerosene. I mean, why? An open flame, that's got to be good. But this electricity thing. So a lot of these so be very careful at 25 judging some of these outliers in your class who have these radical ideas, because that radical idea might be mainstream. Would you agree, though, in your assessment, because you've placed a gazillion implants, would you agree that in 2015 minis, you're still kind of like taboo? I mean, it's kind of like,
they are.
It's kind of like you're just you're not a real doctor, or you're not a real implantologist. I mean, doesn't a real implantologist sink a 5.0 millimeter root form and bone graft around it and charge out a lot of money? And isn't a mini implant just something that I don't know? Do you feel that way?
Well, I do. I think that it's kind of the genesis of where the mini implants came from, how they were originally marketed. I think this all goes to what you said earlier regarding the fact that there are proportionally very few American dentists or U.S. dentists that place implants compared to the rest of the world. This goes back as far as with standard size implants, the bias against general practitioners originally, where Brandemark came into the U.S. and basically gave the ability to place implants to 2 groups, an oral surgeon or a prosthodontist. They had to include the prosthodontist only for the fact that nobody else would be able to restore implants that were placed every which way but straight. And it wasn't until a little bit later on that the doors opened up for the periodontists and then eventually opened up to the rest of us. I think now what we see is because of that historical change that occurred and more general practitioners coming into the marketplace to place implants, we are running into 2 situations now. One, we are running into a turf war with the specialists. The turf war with the specialists is legitimate. It's cyclical. We see it in history, dental history, over and over. I remember when I was in school, we were being taught straight wire ortho, and the orthodontists were very much threatened by that. Generation before me was root or molar endo, and the endodontists were worried that they were going to lose all their business. There's enough out there, and I think what's happened is the small diameter implants came into play. They were marketed initially as a kinder, simpler, gentler implant for the inexperienced general practitioners. And the general practitioners are the ones that really decided to embrace that technology, and there's some wonderful things that are being done with it. The problem, I believe, as you said, is that the majority of specialists are not embracing the small diameter implants. They're very much pushing full-size diameter treatment plans, as we're seeing with things like all-on-4, which do require a full-size implant to do it. But it's.
But let me stop you right there.
Sure.
The all-on-4, not so much the brand name but
Sure.
that concept. How much would that cost an American? An all-on-4 for grandma to go in there And get the all-in-4. How much?
$50,000 for a case.
Okay,
Easy.
and you're in New Mexico, and I'm in Arizona, and were you born in America?
I was. Hollywood, California.
Well, what percent of America's 330 million people could never afford a $45,000 dental treatment?
Probably more than 90% of them.
Exactly.
Yes.
And do you ever hear the oral surgeon say, or if you don't want the $45,000 option, I can place 4 minis on the lower and 6 minis on the upper with balls and locators, and we'll snap you back in there, and that'll be, how much would something like that generally cost?
Generally we'd be looking at a single arch if they have an existing denture to retrofit, anywhere between $2,500 to $3,500 total for treatment.
If they use their existing denture.
Mm-hmm.
$3,500.
If they don't use it, about $5,000.
And so if it's a new denture, $5,000.
Mm-hmm.
Use their old denture, $3,500. And do you and how many implants have you placed here? I mean, you placed a gazillion.
Oh, I don't even keep track. Thousands.
Yeah. Would you treatment plan 4 in front of the lower mental foramens and then 6 on the maxillary in front of the sinuses?
Correct. So
and how much?
Yeah, go ahead.
And how much do those? And what's the name of your OCO mini implant? Is it the SDI?
The SDI is correct.
Which was invented by Ronald Reagan, the Strategic Defense Initiative. So it's a laser implant shot from a satellite that Ronald Reagan put up in 1980.
Exactly.
Originally designed to take out nuclear weapons from Russia. Now at a denture near you. So you call yours the mini SDI?
Correct. Well, it's the SDI. It originally started out as the mini. We shortened it to the SDI since it's one part of our complete product line.
And what does SDI stand for?
Small diameter implant.
Oh, okay, small diameter implant.
Yeah,
okay.
It's real straightforward.
So then it's really not the Strategic Defense Initiative?
No, but I actually like that, and I like the concept of shooting them in space.
You should have Ronald Reagan with a lightsaber. But anyway, so on the SDI, how much is an SDI mini implant cost? And is that what is the diameter of that?
So our small diameter implants run either 2.2, 2.5, or 2.9 millimeters in diameter. They run in lengths from 10 millimeters out to 16. And we are looking at a cost per implant of just the implant by itself, $55 per implant, $75 including the housing. So you're looking at...
So the whole thing would be $75.
You'd look at... Right.
And if you're putting 4 on the bottom, 6 on the upper, you're looking at 10.
Correct.
So that'd be $750.
That's it. $750 plus your time and effort.
And and by the way, if anybody, I mean you, not anybody else, you should make an online CE course. Say, here is your solution to the 31 million Americans who don't have $50,000 for all-on-4. Let me walk you through how to, grandma's in here. She's got sore spots. She's got loose dentures. She's complaining. You don't like her. I mean, in all honesty, I don't know what would be worse to take on making a new denture for 80-year-old grandma or taking on a 3-year-old kid who's been up all night with a toothache and pulpotomy. Usually the only times I want my license taken away is after a pulpotomy or after a lower denture. I mean, really. I mean, those are the two worst things. And you're doing a reline, and she doesn't want to be without it all day. I mean, I have some of these grandmas that they'll drop their denture off in the morning and they'll sit in my waiting room all day because they will not walk home 3 blocks because they don't want grandpa to see her without her teeth in. And she sits there in the waiting room for 8 hours, and then she'll come in every day to have it adjusted. And my assistant Jan tells me that when they come in, if I didn't give them big bear hugs and kisses and love on them, that they might not even have a sore spot. She thinks some of them are coming back just for attention. But anyway, you should make a course on how to do it. So walk through that right now. If she came in there with you, she had an existing denture, how many appointments would this be? What would you do on the first denture? Walk us through that.
Well, if she has an existing denture and it's serviceable in the fact that the occlusion, the teeth are in good shape, then the first appointment, we're going to treatment plan her. We may do a reline at that appointment because for a implant retained overdenture. We want the best fitting lower denture that we can. We're not going to go make her a new one if everything else works out. So we might do a reline appointment at first, and then we would bring her back for her second appointment. The second appointment then would be to place the 4 small diameter implants, and usually with a significant amount of primary stability, we can then turn around and we can retrofit the denture chair side by using cold cure acrylic. So we're talking.
Okay, wait. Go ahead. I need more details. Would you do this with a 2D pan, or would you want a 3D image of this?
3D is going to give you the most information, but you can do these with a combination of a 2D pan and mapping the bone. Since we are working anterior to the foramen, basically, as long as we stay within the bony envelope, there are no critical structures that we're going to run into. So 2D pan is probably the most common way that these are done. If the patient has a very atrophic mandible, then a 3D scan can give us a lot of information to try to find where that bone is underneath the soft tissue that's hiding it.
Okay, I'm always trying to guess. The 5,000 people listen to this on their headphones, on their iPhones, Samsung. I know what 95% of these dentists that never placed an implant. They're sitting there thinking,
Sure.
Charles, you know what? If I do this, I'm going to screw that mini implant right into the metal foramen, and the next thing I'm going to have is a lawyer in my waiting room wanting to know why I screwed a mini implant from OCO right into her metal foramen. How do you place 4 implants anterior to the metal foramens?
Okay, so in your workup, so when you get ready to go take your pan with this patient, what we will normally do is we will put some sort of radio opaque marker onto the existing denture. So we might take their denture, drill a small little hole at the first bicuspid region, pop a little bit of gutta percha in there, have the patient wear that lower denture, shoot either the scan or the pano, and then that little gutta percha dot will show up as a white dot on the film. We can then go back to the mouth. We look on the x-ray that we've just taken. We can see the distance between that white dot and our mental foramen. Come back to the patient at the time of surgery, put the denture in, take a tissue marking pen, mark that dot onto the soft tissue, and now we know exactly where the foramen are. We stay 5 millimeters ahead of that. That's where our most distal implants are dropped, and then we drop the 2 implants in the center. We're
Okay, so you're talking about 5 millimeters in front of that metal foramen for the
Correct.
anterior loop. Explain what that means to the viewer. What is the anterior loop? What does it concern you?
When you look at a pantograph, when you're looking at a 2D film, you're going to see the mental foramen, which is going to be the hole that is the emergence of the IA nerve as it turns into the mental nerve. In about 30% of patients, there is what is called an anterior loop. So an anterior loop occurs when it's impossible for the nerve to make basically a right hand or 90-degree turn to come out of the bone. So if you take a look at a pano, you can guess with pretty good success what ones are going to have an anterior loop by the fact that if the infraalveolar nerve is running parallel or straight across to the foramen, then it's probably going to have an anterior loop because it's not going to be able to come down, make a left-hand turn, come right out the bone. So what it's going to have to do is loop forward and come back through that foramen. If you look at a pano and you see an infraalveolar canal that has a big slope to it, basically starts up high in the posterior, dips down, and then comes back up towards the foramen, there's a good chance then that nerve can come straight out and not have a problem. We stay 5 millimeters ahead because we know from not only CT studies but also cadaveric studies that average distance of that loop, if it does occur, is about 3 millimeters, and then that additional 2 gives us the safety zone.
Okay, so then let's stand grandma on her head and keep talking about how do you avoid the maxillary sinuses?
So the maxillary sinuses.
Because you can only place the implant down, right? So you'd have to flip grandma over.
We got to flip her over and go from the other end. With maxillary sinuses, again, it's done with our pano. We can again have a radio opaque marker that we can use to use the denture to establish a distance. Otherwise, as soon as you take a denture out, you take a look at an atrophic or even an edentulous mandible or maxilla. You don't have any landmarks that you can really work with, at least that show up radiographically. So we'll usually do the same type of marking on the upper denture if we're going to do it. stay anterior to the sinus. There is no specific distance. I like to stay about 2 millimeters in front of the anterior wall of the sinus just to assure that I don't perforate through, or that there might be some irregularities. With the maxillary arch, many times a CT scan is going to give you a lot more information regarding the sinus. But again, through a pano, if you have a good one, you're gonna be able to use that in order to keep yourself out of trouble. The other structures that we're going to be looking at not only is the sinus, but we also want to look at where the nasal floor is at, because we're going to probably put 2 implants somewhere in that 8-9 region, and grandma doesn't really like it when she has implants inside her nose. So we want to make sure that we're running short of the floor of the sinus, and or floor of the nasal cavity. And then the third thing that we're looking at really is the nasal palatine canal. We want to avoid trying to put implants into those canals too. So those are the structures that we're looking at, just like we would with conventional style implants, and it makes it easy with small diameter implants that are less than 3 millimeters in diameter.
And are you gonna lay a flap for these, or are you just gonna go right through the tissue?
Not necessarily. Most of the time we're going to go directly through the tissue. The only time that we will usually reflect a flap, or I don't even want to call it a flap, we usually reflect a small window, is if we have a lower arch that has a knife edge to it, basically that the bone is resorbed enough that there is not really a flat spot that we can gain a purchase point for our drill. So we'll make a very, very small incision. It could be 5 to 7 millimeters in length. Just expose the top of that bone and be able to center our drill appropriately.
Now you teach hands-on courses with these.
Correct.
And talk about where are your hands-on courses?
Well, we do these courses all over the U.S. We run 33 Implant 1 courses, which entail not only small diameter but full diameter implants. We run 33 of those courses, and we also run 12 cadaver-based courses per year. So we've got a pretty full schedule of courses where doctors can get trained on this. We have done some specific small diameter only courses that are also available, and then we also just work with the doctors. We'll evaluate scans for them. We'll help them treatment plan. We'll get them started. Our reps will come out to the offices, make sure that they're doing everything correct. And then there's even the ability to have myself come out and work with them with cases. So we try to get...
You know what I wish you would do? I mean, I really feel like, I've lectured 1,500 times in this country. Mm-hmm. I feel like I know my homies. And I think that you have to deconstruct the sales process. I always tell people that, the biggest asset in American loan is their home. Second biggest asset is their car. And an annuity, selling your home to an annuity is a good thing for grandma. Why give all your money to your ungrateful children and live like a pauper? So you could give your home to a bank, and they'll try to guesstimate how long you're going to live. And they'll say, okay, you're 80. We think you'll be dead in 8 years. Your house is worth 150. We'll give you this much. And if you live to be 112, we take a bath. And if you die tomorrow, we win. And overall, we make money. And so it's too big of a decision. So the first commercial is just you, a guy I can trust, getting to know you. And all you're saying is, grandma, just call me and get the CD and listen to it. Then when she gets the CD, it's just grandma, I can't tell you how much money you're going to get each month until you just call me back and give me your address. And I think it's a big stretch to go from, I've never done this ever. I'm 95%. I've never placed an implant. And now you're wanting me to sign up for this course. I think you got all these great programs that all my friends, a lot of my friends have taken it. I got friends now. My best friend, Dennis, lives in Albuquerque, Craig Steichen. He thinks you're a god that walks on water. You should put these online on Dental Town, because if you put that course, it's real easy for that dentist just to sit back. Like I watch mine on my big screen. So I'm in my chair. I'm on my big screen. I'm in surround sound. And I think after they watched you for an hour or two or an entire curriculum, then they'd say, you know what? I can see 10 ladies with dentures. I'm going to sign up. Because obviously to place implants, you're going to need to go to your hands-on course. But I think you should deconstruct it with putting up the course on Dental Town first. And then they get to know you. They get to trust you, like you, love you, understand it. And that's what will get them off the couch. Because my job is, how do you get this dentist motivated and inspired to go for it? You know, how do you get him to dive for the ball? How do you get him to dive into the bleachers while he throws a basketball back into his teammate and then breaks his neck on the, you know, I'm trying to get him motivated. And I think it's too far of a stretch to go from I've never placed an implant to now I'm going to go to a hands-on course. And the results are clear. 95% of the dentists have never placed an implant. So we got to do something different. And I also want to apologize to you because small diameter implants are only 20% of your business, but I've kind of spent the first 20 minutes only talking about that. So let's switch gears to I don't want to have them brand you as a mini implant guy. So now let's switch gears to root forms. What's the bigger market? I read things that 96% of crowns are placed one at a time, 96% of implants are placed one at a time to replace one missing tooth. Is that what you're seeing on your implant business?
Absolutely, absolutely. The single tooth replacement is the most common replacement that's out there. I think one, because it's probably the largest need, and two, it's what most practitioners are comfortable with. We are seeing more and more of the larger cases that are starting to come around. We are seeing people that are racing the full arch rehabilitation on either 4 or 6 implants. But that's a big step. It's a huge step to go from a single implant placement to a full arch, because now, as you know, there's a lot of other factors that come into play. It's not just placing the implant. A single implant, that is a straightforward thing that any dentist out there can do with a little bit of training, because you're able to use the adjacent teeth to help you guide it. It's, you know, you kind of split the difference between it. It's not that difficult. It actually is more difficult in my eyes to cut a 3-unit bridge prep than it is to place a single implant in any edentulous space, as long as there's adequate bone. So yes, we see the single implants as the bread and butter, and we see the larger cases and the cases that involve grafting as being where the next step that most practitioners go to.
Okay, well, I want you to weigh in on first, because you know, these dentists, the whole motto with Dental Town is at dentaltown.com. No dentists have to practice solo again.
Sure.
America could be summed up with money's the answer, what's the question? So you have a lot of people trying to sell you technology and gadgets and machines that really clouds the discussion. So I want you to weigh in on this debate, because there's 2 camps here.
Sure.
I've never, this person listening to you on their headphones, they're on the treadmill. I hope they're on the treadmill. I hope they're not at Dairy Queen eating a banana split, but whoever it is, they've never placed an implant, and they're hearing, well, to place my first implant, I'm supposed to buy a $150,000 3D x-ray machine and then make a surgical guide and then snap it on those 2 teeth, and it'll have stop guides so I can't hit the mental foramen or the sinus, and then I'll just go in there like Stevie Wonder, and I can't screw up, and I'll place it right there, and I'll be safe. And I graduated with $250,000 student loans. Now you're talking about a $150,000 3D machine and an implant kit, and then we're back to 95% of Americans never placed an implant. The other camp says, dude, you're a dentist, you're a surgeon. I don't want your training wheels. You need to learn how to lay a flap. And like say, there's a tooth in front of it and behind it 96 times out of 100. You just casually said, you split the difference. I mean, come on, you split the difference, mesial, buccolingual, mesial distal. Do you think that buying a 3D x-ray machine and using it to make a surgical guide is kind of overkill, and that you really should just be able to learn how to lay a flap, look at the bone, and place a single root form implant for a single missing tooth?
I agree. I think it is overkill for a single tooth.
And that's 96% of the market.
That's 96% of them. I also think that the push towards the problem with going in that direction, that saying, you know what, I've never placed an implant before, I'm going to do it guided, all mine are going to be guided, is what happens when that day comes that your guide doesn't show up or your guide is produced incorrectly. Now, if you don't have the experience or the skill to have done it by hand, then you're kind of stuck. And I believe that you should be able to do these very, very easily. We do have the skills, as you said. I'm definitely in the camp of that you are a dentist, you have the skills, you can do this. Do you need to have a cone beam? Absolutely not. Millions upon millions of implants have been placed without a cone beam. Where a cone beam is necessary is if there is something that you cannot see through conventional radiography. The combination of conventional radiography and ridge mapping can give you all the information you need. And go ahead and lay a flap, expose the bone, see where you are. It's not that difficult once you do it that way. I think that we're running into a situation where cone beams are becoming more common, and we're getting pressure. And I'm not going to stand on a soapbox and say who the pressure's coming from, but we are getting.
You get on that soapbox right now. I want to hear it on Howie's podcast.
We're feeling the pressure. I like to tell people that the two people that are going to tell you that you should have a cone beam to do every single one of your cases is either a guy that's trying to sell you a cone beam or the guy that just bought one and needs to justify that he just spent $120,000. You can do it. What does a cone beam do for you? Cone beam takes away a little bit of the guessing. It does give you more information. I compare it to the difference between doing dentistry with an analog x-ray, e-speed film, or doing it with digital. You can do dentistry both ways, and you probably do just as well with a conventional hard copy x-ray as you will with a digital. It's all about what you do, what you use it for. I think, though, that the majority of doctors out there can go in there, diagnose an area that needs to have an implant, use conventional radiography, use their eyes, use their hands, open up a flap, take a look at it, drop an implant in very successfully, and never look back. It's fear. It's fear that prevents everybody from getting started. Much of that fear, I believe, is propagated by individuals that either don't want us to do implants or feel threatened that somebody else is doing implants. And if you really look at the statistics in the literature, I always hear people say, well, what if I run into a nerve? What if I cause a paresthesia? If you try to take a look at that and try to do a literature search on that, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a whole lot published out there about infraalveolar damage due to implant placement. Sure, does it happen? Yeah, absolutely it can. But if you do your diagnosis and treatment planning correctly, you should be able to do it. There is no excuse why every general dentist shouldn't be able to place implants. And the fact of the matter is in the times that we live in today, now that they're teaching implantology in dental school, that guy who graduates this year, is going to be coming out hungry to place implants. And if you're sitting in a practice and you're not placing implants, that guy's going to move in right next to you, and he's going to take all your business, because your patients are going to go over there for the implant and then find out that they can get their prophies over there, and they can get their fillings over there, and their family can get treated over there, and now you've lost a patient. Since we know in dentistry patients like to have a one-stop shop, and that's the reason why we as general practitioners have learned to do everything that we have. If we didn't, then we would stick to doing fillings and placing crowns, and that's all we would do.
You said it though. You said fear. You brought up the fear word. So I want you, since we're two groups are listening to us right now.
Sure.
5% have placed implants, and of those, probably 5% of those people have done the really big aggressive stuff, like all on four or something. But let's focus to the 95% who never placed one. And fear is the overwhelming thing. Cherry pick me my first implant case? What if I am afraid? What cases would be not an entry level case? Start telling me cases that if I was going to place my first implant or my first 4 implants this summer, tell me what those cases. What should I be looking for? And would it be I pulled the tooth and then place it, or would you let it heal up? Go through 3 or 4 specific cherry-picked, low-hanging fruit of how to get started placing an implant.
Sure. Number one, as we talked about earlier, that fully edentulous patient that needs something to retain their lower denture. Those are fantastic cases to start with. Number one, you don't have any anatomical structures to deal with. 2, if your implant placement is not exactly correct, there's not an aesthetic issue to deal with at all, since everything's going to get covered with plastic. So that number one. Two, look for those cases that the patient has had a tooth missing somewhere, within 6 months to 5 years, because we're probably going to have enough bone volume there as long as there wasn't any trauma to begin with. I try to steer my docs away from immediate placement as their first cases. We always get those doctors who will call me up and say, hey, I have this young girl. She's like 25 years old. She's absolutely beautiful. She needs to have number 8 extracted, and I would like to do an extraction immediate placement on her. That is definitely not your first case, because there's a lot that can go wrong. Immediate placement is technically sensitive. So look for those cases where the patients have lost the teeth already. Lower first molars are great to start with. Upper bicuspids are great to start with. Upper molars sometimes can be a challenge due to decreased vertical height.
Meaning the sinus?
Meaning the sinus is pneumatized, and they're going to be pressed a little bit for height of bone. So, we look for those areas that have sufficient bone, not only in the buccolingual orientation, but also vertically. We're looking for areas that have a tremendous amount or a normal amount of keratinized tissue. And if we can find those, then those cases are really, really easy to do. And if you dig into your practice, most doctors will find that they have a plethora of patients that fall into that. The other thing is, what type of patient do you look for? I truly believe, getting started, patients they like to see the success of their dentists, and it always amazes me how much trust a patient has in their dentist, and they know that this might be the first time that you've done a procedure like this, and they're all for it, and they're excited because you're excited about doing it. So try to find a patient that is going to be easy to work on from a psychological point of view. I like to call them the do me patients. They basically will get in the chair, they'll open their mouth as wide as they can. They've got an edentulous space, and they just say, "Tell me when it's all done." Those are really the ones that you want. But
is there any profile you can say? Is that more likely to be older, younger, man or woman, or rural, urban? Is there any? Or is it just a personality profile that's just?
It's personal. It's per person, but I would say that the majority of the patients that fall into that are going to be somewhere in the 40 to 55-year-old age, and then there's a little bit of a break, and then I see that the patients that are 65 and above that are pretty compliant and want to be helped. And the best patient is that patient that's been wanting this type of treatment for a long time and hasn't had the opportunity to do it because either they couldn't afford it or the fact that they didn't know that it was even possible. And it's just a matter of finding the right patient, not only
where I found all my first implant sinus lifts, everything that scared the crap out of me, and I just needed some research monkeys to experiment on, is at a Farran family reunion. And my first sinus lift was a mother-in-law. I mean, there's all these adorable 25-year-old women dentists that got out of school, and she doesn't realize her uncles would all stand up in a row if she said, "I need a research guinea pig for an implant, a bone graft." All of her uncles would "Oh yeah, I don't care." I mean, and then after that, then I went to failed financial arrangements, where I just went in and said, "Okay," so they were totally prepped. They couldn't afford the root canal buildup and crown. They were going to go for the extraction. Everything, the FA was done. They paid for the extraction. And then I walked in there and said, "Hey, I got an idea. How about the money's the same, but we do this instead? We pull this, do bone graft, implant, whatever. And they light up the fire." And the same thing about making someone happy is you lower their expectations and then you beat them. Same thing with you don't sit there and tell them you're going to do a DO filling, and then it turns into a root canal buildup and crown because you knew it was close, but you thought it'd be a DO. Now you're going in there and saying, "Oh, by the way, that $250 filling, oh yeah, now let's make it a $2,500 root canal buildup and crown." What you do, if it's close, you tell them it's going to be a $2,500 root canal buildup and crown. You get them prepared for the worst case scenario, and that happens sometimes. and then you go in there and say, oh man, sorry, I was wrong. I thought that was into the nerve, but it's not, and it's not going to be a root canal and crown, and it's only going to be a filling. Now you're their hero, and when you get someone and you're just totally honest, say, I've never done this before, but you know what? You were going to pay for an extraction. I went to this course. I got these implants. You know, I'd like to do this. Are you up for it? I won't charge you a penny more. So go look at your. This might give you new enthusiasm to go to Grandma's house on Sunday.
Sure.
Start looking at those uncles with a different eye. Okay, so what about restoring OCO Biomedical?
Really no different than any other implant out there with regard to just, you know, we use our bone level implant uses a universal connection that's out there. It's an internal hex with a conical seal. Many companies around the world use the same connection. That makes it very familiar to a practitioner and also easy to restore from a laboratory point of view. Because CAD/CAM is available, they can get customized titanium or zirconium abutments if they'd like. If they are a CEREC user or an E4D user, you can drop on a scan body, scan it, build your own restoration right there in your office. So very straightforward restorative. What we do is we actually package our restorative componentry along with our implants, so it's a single package if you would like. For example, on our bone level implant, you get your implant, and along with that you get your analog, your impression coping, your gingiformer, and your stock final abutment, all for a single price. And that takes a lot of the guesswork out of things. If you do need to go with a customized abutment, then it's easy. You still take an impression, you still send it off to the lab, and the only thing that you don't use within the packaging would be your stock abutment. If you are a doctor that is doing only CAD/CAM abutments, only customized abutments for all of their implant cases, then we have an option where you can purchase without the final abutment at a lower price point, and allows you to have all of the flexibility that you need by doing your customization. So, you know,
Charles, I want to stop you. I want to stop you right there. I want you to address this question. I hear this one a lot. You know, I just got back from the CDA or Chicago Midwinter or Cologne. Cologne had 225 or 275 implant companies. And the dentists are just overwhelmed, and they don't want to make a bad decision, and they really don't have the time to figure out 275. That's why humans are so brand loyal. They're heuristics, because when you walk into a grocery store and they have 100,000 items for sale, you don't have time to go look at every single coffee known to man and look at all the ingredients and all that. I just go right over to Folgers, and I've been drinking it for 52 years. And, you know, just so cut down the chase, Charles. This person listening doesn't own an implant system. They're overwhelmed. They don't really want to learn 275 systems. Why should they get your system?
That's a great question. I will preface this by saying that, you know, all implants work. And that's anybody who tells you that all implants or their implant works and another implant doesn't. That's not true. Where we feel our strong suit is we have a very simple surgical protocol. Basically, we have what we call a two-step protocol, which means that we go from a pilot drill to a final drill, not through intermediary steps. That makes surgery very simple. We have a very extensive implant line that has everything from tissue level all the way down to bone level implants and everything in between, also including small diameter. So any clinical case that comes up, we can address it with our implant line, which can be placed with one single surgical kit. And then our implant body, we have a U.S. patent for immediate load. We're one of the only companies that does. And our implant is able to be loaded early. It's able to, in many times, be loaded immediately. I would say about 85 to 90% of my cases, both single and multi-unit, are being loaded immediately. And in the world that we live in today, where people are into immediate satisfaction and immediate gratification, that when a patient comes in with an edentulous space and leaves with a temporary, on an implant, that makes them a very happy patient. And then finally, our customer service, I believe. And so, for me, when I tell doctors, what do you look for? You look for a system that works within what you need, and that has to be a good surgical system, a good restorative system, accomplish what you need clinically, and then have the support from your company to help you get started and then continue and be successful. Because as a company, we're only successful when our doctors place implants, and so we spend a lot in education. We spend a lot of time with our regional reps working with our doctors in order to make them successful.
You know what? A lot of feedback I'm getting is that the reason they went to an institute, or the reason they went for more training, is because they spent a Saturday by their pool on their iPad watching a Dental Town online CE course for an hour or two, and that was the closing deal that said, "I'm interested enough." So I hope you do that. I hope you digitize an intermediate step between this, especially for the 30 million people who only wear dentures. I really wish you'd do a mini, and then I really wish you'd do a another course on the single replacement. But I want to focus in on that single replacement. You said a very controversial word, immediate load.
Yes.
I mean, my God, there's 1,000 threads on Dental Town arguing about that concept. What do you think about immediate load? Obviously, there's probably sometimes that it's good, and sometimes it's a bad idea.
Sure.
Talk about that.
So, so in order to be successful immediately loading an implant, you really have to look at a lot of different things. You have to have some prerequisites. You've got to have the initial primary stability, meaning that the implant doesn't move. And so when you're placing an implant, that's a mechanical stability. Not every case are you able to do that. Bone quality affects it. The style of implant that you use. Do I think that it's possible? Absolutely. I do it all the time. Do I think that many people get themselves into trouble with it? I do. I think if you use the wrong implant with the wrong type of body style that can't give you the type of primary stability that you need, that's really the key. With our system, we feel confident with immediate load because our primary stability is so high. We average torque values when we place our implants anywhere between 50 and 90 Newton centimeters. Most other companies will talk about not going to that 50 or 60 Newton centimeter mark because of the negative consequences that can have on the bone around the implant. Our patented design negates those problems. We actually put bone in tension versus compression, and therefore we don't have those same issues. If you are a doctor and you're doing a lot of immediate load, you are practicing on the cutting edge of implant dentistry. So the possibility for failure is there. It might be a little bit higher than it would be if you took every one of your implants, buried them for 4 months, and then exposed them. But the thing is that patients are reading more about immediate load. They have been exposed to it inadvertently through companies like ClearChoice that advertise teeth in a day. The only way you can have teeth in a day, or restoration in a day, or restoration immediately, is by immediately loading the implant. I don't believe that it's that controversial of a subject. A lot of the research out there shows that done correctly, you have an equal success rate as you do with delayed. And then there are all those advantages to not only promoting your practice, but also providing treatment at a faster clip than you would normally. So
I want to switch gears completely, and once you talk about this, because you've been doing this for over 2 decades, is one of my pet peeves about dentists is if you listen to their conversations, you literally think a bunch of engineers were sitting around a table that weren't even doctors. I mean, like, I used to always have this problem with all the filling classes that you would take. They would talk about, well, Haley Muller wears at 14 microns a year, and Tetrick Saram wears at 18 microns a year. And everybody would be taking notes on the wear rates of all the fillings in dentistry and memorizing. And we're like, dude, that's not a problem I have. I don't put in a filling. My problem is that it wears down. My problem isn't, all those fillings I put in? Yeah, they all wore down. You know what my problem is? I put in all those fillings, and Billy Bob leaves and he still won't floss his teeth and he still won't brush his teeth, and he's working construction in the Arizona desert, so he's taking a 2-liter bottle of Mountain Dew to work with them every day, and 3, 4, 5, 6 years later he's got recurrent decay into those fillings. I wish dentists would quit being engineers and become biologists and realize that we build these wooden barns out on the middle of the prairies, and no matter what happens, termites are going to come get that. And we always blame it on the patient and say, well, you should brush twice a day, and you should floss before bedtime, and you should use a tongue scraper and mouthwash, and see your hygienist at least every 6 months. And at the end of the day, 31 million Americans have no teeth because the termites always come back in and eat everything down. And what implants are to me is bugs can't eat them. The termites can't eat them. I think your ad should be, I think your OCO ad, I wish I could design your marketing advertising. I'd put a barn on the left side. I'd Google Kansas barn eaten by termites. And then on the right side, I'd put an aluminum barn and sit there and say, the barn on the left, your patient didn't brush and floss twice a day, use a tongue scraper, mouthwash, and see their daily hygienist. And that's what every one of your bridges looks like in 6.5 years.
Exactly.
And the person on the right got a titanium barn and doesn't have to brush or floss, and the termites can't eat it. And I really also, another pet peeve of mine is everybody talking about periimplantitis on an implant. Dude, that is not, they're throwing up this red flag, and I just don't see it like I see periodontal disease. Periodontal disease is when those gram-negative falciparum anaerobes are in this messy, junky cementum, and it's nasty, and it's bad, and it's common. And then when you extract that and put in titanium, yeah, the bugs, you still test positive for those bugs. Yeah, you still need to clean it, but it's not nearly the disaster that we see with periodontal disease. Do you agree with that, or do you think I'm wrong on that?
No, absolutely. I think, it's always, in my eyes, a better option to go with the implant. I know when I graduated school and you had a patient that came in with a tooth that was fractured off at the gingival level, what did we do? We tried to do root, we tried to go ahead and do crown lengthening, post and core, endo, put a new crown on it. 3 years later, the crown would break off. You'd start all over again. Nowadays, we look at it, take that tooth out, what are the remnants of that tooth out, put in a piece of titanium, have it last the patient the rest of their life. We're now looking at, and there's so much stuff in the literature nowadays looking at, periimplantitis, as you said, but now the whole big buzzword is the cement sepsis. Cement has caused this. And that's my pet peeve, Howard. It is you're blaming the cement when really we should be blaming the practitioner. Because if cement was that bad, we would have found out a way to screw retain crowns on natural teeth a long time ago. And it basically comes down to the fact, if you put the right amount of cement in and you clean the cement up, there isn't a problem. And where I really laugh about it is now this big push towards screw retain restorations. Well, how are those screw retain restorations made? They cement them outside the mouth. They put them in the mouth. There's still a cement line. It's not the cement that's the problem. It's the inability to clean it up. And I agree with you. I think, when faced with an option of a patient with a edentulous space and you're going to either do a 3-unit bridge or you're going to do a single implant by far is the better treatment option. One, you're going to have a restoration that's going to last patient the rest of their life. Two, you're not going to damage two potentially virgin teeth on either side. And the fact of, like you said, you throw a bridge on there, how many patients are actually going to floss underneath that bridge and get out their floss threader? Very few of them. And so then that 3-unit bridge then becomes a 4-unit bridge down the line and ends up becoming a partial. So, I think that implants are the best alternative when you have a tooth that's missing. It's the best long-term alternative. When we have a patient that's fully edentulous, if they desire something that's fixed, implants are their only option. And we can do very, very successful restorations that should last a patient the rest of their lives. If they don't want something that's fixed, then we can take that piece of plastic that's bouncing around in their mouth and driving them crazy and ruining their life, and basically put a few implants in, attach that denture to it, and we change the way that they live on a daily basis. So I'm a big believer in implants, obviously.
Well, I'm gonna do this. I built a speaking career by assuming that if we really mutually respect each other, I'm going to tell you
Mhm.
what I think.
Sure.
And so many people that lecture just tell you what you want to hear. And I don't. I think true friends are the ones that call you on your shit. And
Hmm.
so I'm going to call Dennis on their shit. You know why they do 3 unit bridges? Because 95% of them have never placed an implant.
Absolutely.
And in business, money's the answer. What's the question? So they look into this missing tooth and thinking, oh my God, I can bill out a $3,000 bridge and I get a bill for 3 crowns, even though I only prepped 2. And they actually feel guilty about charging out a crown fee for a pontic because they didn't do a damn thing. And then they sit there, and then when the tooth snaps off the gum line, they do this root canal because they can bill out. They do a post buildup because they can build out, and then they put on the crown. And I'll call you on your deal. Here's what I did to my associates. You warranty everything 5 years. We are patient centered. We are not doctor centered. It's about
Hmm.
the customer first. And yeah, you can do a root canal and a post buildup, and there's no ferrule, and the crown's going to be as long as the root, but you're good with it. And then you do that, and then when they come in a year later and there's their post buildup crown in the deal, guess what? All the money they spent on that, it didn't last 5 years, is now going to be credited to how you're going to fix it.
Hmm.
And there's no money changing hands. I also um, every endodontist needs to learn how to place implants, because on the street, the homies don't trust their endodontist anymore because they've seen it for 25 years. They send you a failed root canal and it's an old lady and something's wrong. And the endodontist says, oh, well, I've got to give it a try. And then they bill out $1,500, redo the root canal. 6 months later, it's in the trash can, and they never give a penny back. And the reason why they don't give it back is because if your only tool's a hammer, everything looks like a nail. They just wanted the $1,500. They knew it wouldn't work. But
Hmm.
now the endodontists who are differentiating themselves get on the phone and say, dude, look, I can make $1,500 either way. I could do the retreat, but I wouldn't if it was mine. I'm going to pull it right now and place an implant, and I'll send her back to you. Are you good with this implant? Can you restore this? Blah, 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 blah. I want an endodontist who doesn't have to feed his family by doing a $1,500 retreat on a grandma when he knows in the back of the head it's got a flying chance of success. I want an endodontist that's not everything looks like, every, what is it? If your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Exactly.
I wouldn't even refer to an endodontist that can't place an implant. And same thing with periodontists. In fact, Gordon Christian said something, the most controversial podcast I've ever done with the most views is when Gordon Christian said that the specialty of periodontics is done. It's over. He says, why are you going to do all these gum surgeries and crown lengthenings and long rooted teeth? And why are you going to go through the mountain of a molehill when you just pull that baby and put in an implant? Do you agree with what Gordon said?
I do. I do to a certain extent. I think that what we've seen is we've to what you were talking about. I think we're finally getting away, hopefully, from treatment planning according to insurance. That's where the problem really started. When I got out into practice and I was working for a big corporation when I first started out, it was the same thing. It was like, well, we're going to get paid for treatment A, but we will not get paid for treatment B. So guess what? You're going to do treatment A no matter what. I think that more and more dentists today, I have some hope for the profession that more and more dentists are starting to believe in treatment planning for what is correct and what is correct for that patient, not necessarily what is correct for what the insurance will pay for or what the patient can afford. And as far as taking teeth out, I definitely agree. If a tooth is in such a condition that it is non-restorable, or you have, I believe, less than a 75% chance of recovery on it, then an implant is the best option. Where I don't necessarily agree with it is when a patient comes in, has an arch full of teeth, they've got maybe a third of those teeth that have an issue, and the easy way is taken out to say, well, let's just slick them and throw in 4 implants and a piece of plastic. That I don't necessarily agree with. I still am of the mindset that we should try to save teeth if we can, if the chance of success is high enough. Because no matter what we put in, they're never going to be as good as the teeth that these patients have started out with. But Absolutely. If a patient comes in and they've got,
Can I call you on that one?
you can. I would.
Well, let me call you. The only reason I disagree with what you just said there is because you're one dentist to another when we're both men.
Mhm.
In my 28 years, Phoenix, Arizona, I don't know if Albuquerque is the same, but we have a lot of retirement community. I'd say
Sure.
15% of Phoenix is people that retired from here to Canada, getting out of the cold. And, I just see these ladies that were 65 and the dentist tried to save the tooth, like you said, with the root canal buildup and crown. And when she was 65, she gave someone $2,500. And 10 years later, full blown Alzheimer's, dementia, the nursing home, root surface decay just eats the average American. And basically, a nursing home's all women. There's just no men in there. If there is, his name's Lucky, and he only lives a week. And the average person in a nursing home loses a tooth a month for root surface decay. So when grandma's been in there for the first year, she lost 12 teeth, and those root canal buildup and crowns are gone. I wouldn't have a problem if you came to me and you were 65. I don't have a problem doing a root canal buildup on you because you're probably going to die, open up the refrigerator, reaching for a beer and a chunk of cheese, and you're a man, you'll just drop dead in your kitchen. But those women, the average woman lives 11 months longer than her mother, and when they come in at 65, I say, Mary, you're 65. How old was your mother when she passed away? And she goes, my mom's still alive. She's 85. I'll say, can she still brush and floss her teeth? Oh, no, she's crippled, rheumatism, dementia, Alzheimer's. And I'm sitting there, and seriously, this is stress for me. I'm sitting there telling her, man, if we pulled this tooth, yeah, it's an emotional loss for you and me to lose a tooth.
Mm-hmm.
But God, if you're going to spend the last 5 years of your life not being able to brush or floss your teeth, I'd rather have titanium in there. What do you think of that rant?
Well, I agree. I think in a geriatric population like you're talking about, that those are better options. Those teeth usually that come in with enough problem to make us start thinking about an implant are usually in pretty bad shape. Where I'm talking about it is that 40-year-old woman who comes in who has had issues. Still has a relatively intact dentition. Absolutely, take out what can't be restored, take out what doesn't have a long-term prognosis, replace it with a titanium screw, and get them on their way. The problem that I have is that those same 40 to 45-year-old women are walking into offices and they're saying, you know what, you're having these problems here. Why don't we just take everything out so you don't have to worry about it anymore? That is an issue for me.
Last question. We're
Sure.
past our hour. We're at an hour and two, but I got to throw you into one overtime question. They're always asking on Dental Town, should I cement that crown on the implant or should I screw it? Cement or screw?
I'm a cement guy, Howard. I'm a cement guy. Clean your cement up, you won't have any problems.
And is this a temporary cement or a real cement?
No, I cement with permanent cement because I don't expect my crowns to fail on me. The way I look at it is if you cement with temporary cement on a single implant crown, you're not going to be able to get that off, especially if your lab did a good job of manufacturing that crown to fit that abutment with a perfect resistance form. I believe in permanently cementing. The only time that I do temporary cement is multi-units if I'm doing a full arch. Now I've got enough resistance from all of my restorations in order to keep everything on, and I want to be able to have some retrievability. That's also where I think that screw retained has an advantage. I also think that screw retained has an advantage if you are in a situation where you have insufficient vertical height, and there's no way to have restorative material and your abutment. Then I think that a screw retained is the way to go. But on a single straightforward unit, I'm cementing, I'm cleaning my cement up, I'm not having peri-implantitis problems, and they're lasting for a long, long time.
And last but not least, I'm driving to work. I think I'm going to place my first implant. How much is an intro starter kit with you?
So an intro, we can get you into depending on what you're doing. If you're looking at small diameter implants, we can get you into 30 small diameter implants and a surgical kit for about $1,900, which is you'll get that back twice in the first case. And if you are looking at full-size implants, we can get you into a kit with 10 implants for around $3,000.
And for $3,000, I'd have every single thing I need. I'd have the implant drill. I'd have everything.
If you want to have the implant drill, we can get that for you. If it's about $6,500 to get you all set up with an implant drill, implant kit, and a small variety of implants. You'll make that back.
Is how much? Is how much?
About $6,500. We can do that for you.
So if I've never placed an implant, I could call Charles at OCO Biomedical, and for $6,500, I could get everything I need from A to Z to place my first, like, how many implants? About how many would that come with?
That would come with 10 implants.
10 implants. Well, hey, dude, I love you to death. It was great seeing you speak at your meeting in Albuquerque. Like I say, my best friend from dental school, Craig Sykin, he thinks you walk on water. Everybody I know that knows you thinks you're the bomb. I'm just very fortunate that you spent an hour with me, and I'm crossing my fingers that you build me 2 courses on Dental Town. One, to help the 30 million Americans that don't have a tooth in their head, the small mini implants that no oral surgeon will talk about. And then the other one, the 96% of the low-hanging fruit, just place one implant on one missing tooth at a time.
We will work on it for you, Howard.
Thank you for everything that you do for dentistry, implants, and thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. You have a great day.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.